So yesterday, I had the opportunity to sit down with a couple of other pastors at my church and actually spend a Sunday morning discussing how we disciple Gen Z, Millennials, and even Gen Alpha, and also bridge the generational gap with some of the older generations. The cool thing about it was it started a conversation, and I talked with a lot of people in my church afterwards. They said it was a great conversation, but it was the start of a conversation, and I would agree. I think our pastors would agree with that. I wanted to take some time though and kind of unpack a little bit more, if I had the time to explain it or to talk about it, of what do we actually do with some of these things. I want to recap some stuff. If you didn't go back and watch either of those panel discussions, I'll basically give it to you here, and then we'll kind of go from what happens and where do we go here from here. I think when we look at the good and the bad shifts, both culturally but also in the church with Gen Z and millennials specifically, I think we can look at obviously some of the things that we know, that there's a mental health crisis, there is loneliness, because we are interconnected online, it's actually creating a level of isolation in relationships and the way people function. 1 in 5 of millennials, 19% reported that they feel lonely all of the time. That was in May of 2020. In 2019, 73% of people aged 18 to 22 said that they sometimes or always feel alone. And so we see that this is still happening even post-pandemic. There's a level of anxiety, there's a level of exhaustion, there's a level of isolation that people are feeling. We know that screen time doesn't help. An average of 4.8 hours a day for our teenagers they're spending on social media. Millennials and Gen Z that said that they're increasing their daily screen usage, raising concern of what is being, put into their feeds and what's being put into their algorithms. Young people are way more exposed to things because of that screen time. It's pornography saturated. There is obviously violence. There's even just a news cycle being constantly in their feeds can be really damaging as they're consuming all of that content. I think though when you look at some of the good things that have happened, we see a trend in the right direction in church attendance with Gen Z. Gen Z is actually leading the resurgence in church attendance. Gen Z is going to church 1.9 weekends per month. That's right, just under 2. It's still not really consistent, but they are the most consistent out of the different people, different generational categories that they're looking at. And I do think that even though church attendance isn't a discipleship mechanic in and of itself, it is showing that people are interested in getting into churches. And I think that that's a huge win. Gen Z is also leading a spiritual awakening that is a little bit more raw than some of the polished programming that even millennials like myself would do. They're also known as the corrective generation. So if you talk to young Christians or even just young people in general, they are really, really authentic and really, really raw, and they're open. They're quicker to get that way than previous generations. They can see that the world is broken. They can see that people are hypocrites. They can look at all of the chaos that's happening in the world, and they can say, is faith actually solving this problem? Because if divorce rates, for example, are the same in the church as they are outside of the church, then why would I need Jesus? And so it's kind of forcing churches and leadership to really take a authentic position. And I think it's good. We also know that Gen Z is very passionate about being positive change makers. There was a study done that said 83% of Gen Z and millennials that are entering into the workforce, 83% of them want to make a change or be a part of an organization that will make a positive impact in the world. So I think that that's just a huge thing. Now, here's some of the things that I didn't get into that I really would have liked to, and that is, where do we pair the older generations to the younger generations? How do we connect them? How do we make sure that we're both both receiving and reciprocating gifts, talents, and just making sure that we're, doing this thing together. So Gen Z is actually really hungry for mentorship. There's 83%, Adobe did this study actually, so it's not even a Christian study, but 83% of people in the workplace say that they need a workplace mentor to kind of help them with their career. And so we know that Gen Z and millennials desire to have a relationship that they can leverage and help to grow. And so I think this is also a personal thing for Gen Z and millennials as well, which provides a perfect avenue and on-ramp for some of the older generations to come in and really help this generation. If fatherlessness is plaguing this generation, which it is, then there needs to be somebody to come fill in that gap. And so I also think the other big thing is this thing of affirmation and being able to cast a vision, being able to say, I see your potential and I can help you reach it. I was studying some companies that have actually reverted or changed their slogans and their marketing campaigns because of Gen Z. Everything is purpose driven. And so there are organizations that are trying to tap into that. As a matter of fact, the Army has established the be all you can be slogan that they used to use a few years back. They're bringing that back because it's resonating with younger and younger people. They again want to make an impact, and so if you tie it to affirmation and being able to say, hey, if there's a clear vision here, that will get them on board. And so that's one of the ways that the generations can kind of come together in this thing. Gen Z really just needs honesty and humility from their leaders. They need leaders who care more about integrity than appearing successful. I just did a video on Robert Morris. You can go check that one out. And I think that's a perfect case of what Gen Z Christians especially are seeing. They're looking at church leaders. They're looking at spiritual leaders, and they're saying this isn't making sense to me. And so they have to have transparency and authenticity in those relationships to be able to prove that it's real. And that's really going to be the big thing for them moving forward. And so I think we need the element of spiritual mentoring, spiritual coaching. I think we need some practical teaching in this as well. But I also think there has to just be a love of this generation. There has to be a love of young people. There has to be a love, if you're a young person, of older generations. There has to be a mutual respect that is given again. And when we can find that and when we can unlock that, I think that that's a great a win for not only churches, but just society in general. One of the things that I think we haven't really tapped into a ton of, and that is this concept of reverse mentoring, right? Where younger people might be more adept in technology. They can help older generations to get tech savvy, right? For older generations to be able to think of like critical thinking and how to think critically, because younger generations are so tech driven. AI is a big focus. They're chronically online for a lot of young people to be able to understand how to think, and I'm going to say this word, and I hope it tracks when I say it, to think in an analog setting, to think in ways that are not connected to computers, not connected to devices. I think that is going to be where we find a win in that reverse mentoring process, both for young and old. I think that we have to understand too that it's not an ageist thing. It's more of just trying to understand, how do we do it, right? A lot of the older people that I talk to say that young people just don't want anything from them. I think it would be more of a question of, what are you trying to offer them? Because if it's more information, they don't need more information. They have information. But what they do need is somebody who will care about them, somebody who will invest in them, somebody who will take upon themselves to help them get where they want to go. And I think that's really the biggest thing for what this generation needs. But also, I think one of the things that we need to be reminded of as a younger generation is that there's actually still so much that an older person can invest in us and still offer us. And so we have to understand that. And it has to be this mutual respect that I think we have to get back to. I think we have to be able to do that. I think we have to get back to just being able to come together on core principles, core spiritual truths, especially if you're a Christian and you hold to a biblical standpoint. We have to get back to biblical worldviews. I think we just have to have more conversations and less of thinking that we have the answers for things. I think that's ultimately where this thing goes really, really crazy, is when we come to a situation, an interaction or a relationship thinking we have the answers of how to maximize that relationship instead of just letting it be whatever it's going to be, and being intentional in our time with it. I think that's going to be just the biggest thing. And so if you would like more information, or you'd like to go back and watch some of the things that we talked about in our church services, I can link that in the description below. And let me know your thoughts. What are you seeing when it comes to generational shifts? What are you seeing when it comes to the generational gaps? Are you seeing those things in your workplace? If you're a Christian, let me know, how do we fix the discipleship problem intergenerationally? If you're not a Christian, let me know, are you seeing this stuff in your workplace? Are you seeing it in your interactions that you have with people? I would love to hear from you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to go check out those videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.